So it's a Friday lunch rush, the busiest, rush of the week. And you're like, okay, well, I got to train this person fast. So I'm just going to bring him in on Friday at 11:30 and we'll get him right trained up because we'll throw him right in the fire. And
They're going to sink or swim.
The busiest rush of the week, they're going to sink or swim. And that's going to prove them. That's going to prove their mettle as to whether or not they're going to belong here on this team. Because if they can make it through that, they can make it through anything. Man, that's a really bad philosophy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator podcast. I am your host, Andrew Scott, multi-unit restaurant owner for almost 20 years. And now at Ownershift, we help restaurant owners increase their sales, increase their profits, and help them have more freedom with their time, just like we've done for over 1,000 restaurant owners all across the US, Canada, and across the world. We've got Dave Doyle here. He is our client success director, also multi-unit owner for actually longer than me. And what we're going to talk about today is how to turn your new hires into great hires, training hacks to improve your team quickly. So Dave, have you ever found it when you hire a brand new employee and you give them a few shifts of training. Oh, hey, here's where everything is. You go through that. Then you walk back in a week later, you work the shift with them and it feels like they know nothing. You ever experienced that? So the story that I always talk about is I like to think that we had a detailed training process. We had things written down of what they needed to do. And, I thought things were great. And so then I came in after 3 months of having this new employee there. It was, I can't remember her name, but anyway, I remember I was running the cash at that time and our main products were sandwiches, salads, and smoothies, right? That was our main bread and butter. That's what we did. And I literally said, hey, can you make a strawberry banana smoothie? And she looks at me in the middle of our busiest time and she's like, I've never made a smoothie before. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell have you never made a smoothie before? It's one of our 3 products.
After 3 months?
After 3 months, what the hell? And so I'm just like, oh my God, okay, fine. I will do it then. And I fixed it. And then I realized that there was a problem with our training because someone at 3 months should know how to make one of our core products. And anyway, so that's when I realized there was a problem with our training. So I had to go back and redo everything. And so let's talk about that. So I know that there's things that, you work with our clients on for training. So what are some of the biggest things and some of the biggest tips that, most restaurant owners should implement right away to help the training get better and quicker?
Oh man. Off the top of my head, I think there's probably 3 big areas. One is orientation. So actually bringing people in and orienting them into your space. And then, I don't know, I'm bringing up kind of big topics here. The second one is not moving them too fast. So actually training the person, not necessarily the position.
Okay.
And we can dive into that one for sure. Yeah, those are 2 big ones.
Let's start there. So orientation, because everyone's probably thinking, well, I already do orientation. What's the big deal with that? Sure, I bring them in, they sign some papers, and then I give them a tour. What else is there?
Do they really give them a tour though?
Well, I don't know.
A lot of people do not, and that's actually a piece of it. So I hear all the time, and I've done it. I've totally done it myself. Early on, where you hire somebody for a specific position, you bring them in, and you're busy. You're hiring out of desperation or something like that, and you just throw them in the fire. So it's a Friday lunch rush, the busiest rush of the week. And you're like, okay, well, I got to train this person fast. So I'm just going to bring him in on Friday at 11:30 and we'll get him right trained up because we'll throw him right in the fire. And
they're going to sink or swim.
The busiest rush of the week, they're going to sink or swim. And that's going to prove them. That's going to prove their mettle as to whether or not they're going to belong here on this team. Because if they can make it through that, they can make it through anything. Oh. Man, that's a really bad philosophy.
I've never done that, Dave. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, exactly. So what I learned later is, man, you got to flip that whole script if you want to have somebody who is going to stay, who is going to be trained well, and who's going to stay for a long time because they're going to have loyalty, they're going to have trust, and so it's totally impractical to do it the way I just described.
Yeah.
The practicality of it is, and it's funny because people with kind of like more of a classic mentality of just do the job, get to work, figure it out, learn it, shoot themselves in the foot because they think that they're giving tough love, but what they're doing is they're setting up their new team members for failure. They're just
100%.
not setting them up for success. And it's just that simple. So
because
we
think of this way.
create an environment where they can learn and grow and get better fast, not create an environment where they just want the hell out of there because this place sucks.
Yeah, because and here's how things are different now, right? That might have been a way where people would have been like, well, I really got to keep this job, so I got to do it. Well, now there's 100 different places they could go and work at. And if they walk into one place and they are like, this place is crazy, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, like they're not going to come back. Like how many times have you brought someone in for this crazy busy shift and they just never came back the next day? Like I actually, you know what's funny?
Yeah.
I actually had this happen once. We were open and we served bar rushes, at 2 a.m. I literally remember that we just had this line out the door and we had hired this newer person and they were working there and they were, just on the line doing everything. And he just kind of looks at me, he's like, hey man, like, what's that?
Is this the story where you left them for a bit? No,
but that is another story I should tell. But this one in particular, actually, I can tell that one after. But basically, the story of what happened here is he's like, "Hey, man, I just got to run to the back for a minute," and then like 15 minutes go by and we're just getting slaughtered out there. And then I forget who it was. Another one of the employees like looks at me, he's like, hey, where'd Billy go? Or like, where'd the new guy go? And I'm just like, just don't worry about it. He's gone. Just keep going. and basically the dude walked out in the middle of the shift and, we were just
back for a minute, never to return.
He just walked out the back door. that was it. Never heard or saw him again. And I was just like, keep going, just batten down the hatches. It was just like, what else can you do at that point in time?
Exactly.
But funny enough. So the other story that you mentioned is, again, this is a master class in how not to train someone. Basically, this dude on his first day came in. I showed him the basics of how to make the sandwiches, and I basically went through that with him. And then we did deliveries. This is back before Uber, before DoorDash, before all that kind of stuff. And basically this person called in for like a $30 order and we were really slow. This was like an off-peak time and there was no delivery driver on call. So I'm like, okay, I can either take this and be assured of $30 when maybe there's not going to be that many customers walk in. And so I'm like, okay, man, I'm going to show you how to use the cash real quick. And I just like, here's where this button is and here's where this button is. Okay, you got it. Okay, I'll be back in like half an hour. And I literally just like walked and left this dude on his first day in the business running it by himself. Cause again, we were a very small team back time. It was a very small quick service restaurant. We were like 900 square feet. Anyway, and then I came back and I'm like, how was it? He's like, oh, it was fine. Of course, he just didn't show up the next day. Right. So like people are making judgments on whether they want to work for us based on their initial interaction. So orientation is not. And here's the thing. People are in sponge mode. They're learning as much. They are evaluating you. Your first interaction post hire is really how they kind of base what their thoughts of the next, year of their journey with you is going to be like. And so most of us say like, here, sign all these legal documents, or some of it's just like, I'm so busy, just like go and do this. And then you run and do whatever you're doing because you brought them in at the wrong time or you're short-staffed or whatever. They're making judgments about your business and whether they want to work there based on that first interaction.
100%. Imagine going into a public space or like just as a business owner, going to a networking event, a chamber of commerce event or something like that or whatever. And imagine if everybody that you met just looked at you and gruffly and were just like, oh yeah, go over there, do that, or go meet that person. It was just like that, right? Like it doesn't make any sense that you would be offended as a human for having been treated like that. And that is often how employers treat new employees. Is they bring them in and they come in on their first training. Then it's like, yeah, here's your uniform. Here, sign these papers. Okay, go work with that person. And it's like, okay, just. What if you were just an actual human being and just actually treated them like a human being and said, hey, shake their hand, look them in the eye and be like, hey, it's great to have you here. Thank you for taking the risk and taking the leap and coming to work for us. Hopefully you're going to love it and this is going to be awesome. And we're going to show you how this is done. right? Like, isn't that a much more pleasing way to actually meet and communicate with a person? So immediately that's like night and day of how that first impression of that human being that you're taking under your
Yeah.
wing, who also they have a right to go work anywhere they want. So like I said, it is for both parties. It's not just for one side or the other. And so the practicality is being nice and kind and doing it right is actually going to get you a better employee, training faster, staying longer, and making you way more money.
Okay, and so I think that makes a whole lot of sense. I think the next thing we should probably focus on is, what does a training system actually look like? What does it look like? How do we not miss stuff? Because here's what normally happens. I used to do this where it's like, hey, we're making a catering order today. Hey, newbie, you're making a catering order today. Hey, we need you on this station today. You're going to learn that station today. And it was a whole bunch of, it was based on what I needed to do, not on what would actually create the most optimal path for their training, right? And so what we had to do is we had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what does a person need to learn first in order to get up to the most optimal place? Because training is a drain on labor, right? So my managers were always like, hey, I need to make my labor bonuses. Like, how can I get this person up when I'm training all the time? Like, how can I get them up so that they're not a drain on my labor so I can make my bonuses? Which is a great question, because when they made their bonuses, I made more money. So always always on the right side of that. So we had to figure out, how can we get this person up quick enough? And so what we did is we started with the most basic things. And so I think we divided our training into like 8 sections or something like that. Like section number 1 was they went through and they learned how to make our core product, because worst case scenario, at least if they could make it, they could be useful. And so I think shift number 1 was orientation. Shift number 2 was basics on that. Then shift number 3 was a shift where they literally just practiced that. And they just did that for the entire shift. And so they got really, really good at it really, really quickly. They couldn't, go to any other station, but at least they could do that. And at least then they could be productive. Now, the other rules that we had is we typically train people in off-peak times, so our mid-service periods. And we also train them typically in 4 to 5 hour shifts, because typically during training, if there was too much more than that, they didn't retain it. It's like they would do too many different things. The next day they'd show up forgetting everything. So we typically did it in shorter bursts for the first few shifts. Now, we also paired them with a manager or dedicated trainer during that time. We didn't pair them with another random employee. Reason why, and I always mention this, is standards get diluted, right? So say your standard's 100%. Well, your manager's standard isn't going to be as high as yours. It's going to be like 90%, right? And then a supervisor, a dedicated trainer might be a little less than the manager, so their standard's 80%. And then it goes down to your regular frontline people, their standard is going to be like 70% of that. And then they're going to train a newbie, and that newbie's going to come in, their 100% is now 70%. And then theirs is going to drop after that, right? So the thing is, my standards were always 150%. Because then when they got diluted, my managers was like 130%. And then my supervisors was like 110%. So my frontline was like 100%. So I always started them with the highest standards. And we always made sure we went through things specifically. We went through it slowly. And we had a checklist for every single thing that we needed to teach them. And every time I found someone miss something later on, hey, they didn't know how to clean the grill properly. Hey, they didn't know how to do this particular thing. I went back to the training log and I'm like, okay, number 1, was it in our training log? If not, we need to put it in there. Number 2, was it specific enough? And then number 3, was it actually followed? And what I found once we did this is that a lot of our managers and trainers still just did things all out of order, and they didn't follow the process and they didn't fill it out. So we have to make sure we're following a process around it, because otherwise that's how things get missed. We even went so far as to, in our training document, the employee has to sign when they've done it, the manager has to sign when they've done it, and it even has bullet points of every single thing the trainer needs to say. Like when we're talking about uniform standards, it literally says your jeans are appropriate, shorts have to be a certain length or whatever, your hair, if you're in food service areas, must be in a bun, like whatever the case is. Like it had all those standards. It even literally talks about deodorant. Because like We've all had that conversation with somebody who just like doesn't have their personal hygiene up to standards. That's friggin' awkward, man. So I hate having that conversation. So I have it at the first with everybody. So then hopefully they'll get the hint and we never have to do it again later on. But the point is we have every single point laid out for every single thing. And some people would call this overkill. But I'll tell you what, my team was far better trained than any other restaurant around when we executed this profitably, or not profitably, but when we executed it properly. Thank you. Yeah. So that's a big piece of it. So as I say that, what are some other things that, you know, might come up for you? I know you've got some stuff to add there.
Well, what I love about the you know, what we train and coach on now with the training guide is that it's actually more for the trainer than it is for the team member. It's more for the trainer to make sure that everything gets done right, gets done in the right timeline. Even for me, back in the day, I just called it my training cheat sheet. It was the same idea, but it wasn't near to the level that yours was, or the one that we talk about now, but it was the same idea, and at least it kept everything on track. And if I did have somebody training, I created a separate cheat sheet for my managers to train. And again, the whole point is if your trainers aren't training the same as you, then you have to train the trainers to get to that level. And, you know, again, it's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be pretty darn close.
Well, and here's the question.
Train them how to train. Like, you know, like you said, having a dedicated trainer at the beginning days is massive. It's a completely different scenario than in most businesses that I see, even that we coach now. You know, often the training shifts are just happening, like you said, but just whoever happens to be working that day, and they're not trained to be trainers. And that is a massive difference as well.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question for most people listening to this. I know how much time you spend in training frontline employees, which is usually not enough, but how much time do you spend training your trainers? Most people listening to this are like, I just basically tell them to go show them what they're doing. Like, there's not a whole lot of training. So what about the best training theories on how to do it? Like, there's some training theories that we can talk about that actually help people retain information more and better. Some people do training just by talking, for example. But how much time do you spend actually training your trainers, right? Or how much time have you invested to learn how to become a better trainer? And for most owners, that's nothing, right? Because that's just kind of an afterthought. Oh, just do what I do. And they expect everyone to be as good as them. Well, that's simply not going to happen unless you actually train properly. There's a reason people go and get education degrees before teaching in school, right? Because there's more to it than what you can pick up.
Learn how to teach in order to go teach the stuff.
Exactly. So I think it's a really relevant thing to talk about here. So, I mean, the things I see often that are just happening that are so backwards, or that people either don't give, you know, they're either scheduling people at the wrong times to train, so they're too busy, or they can't possibly train that person because they're just overwhelmed and the trainer is not dedicated. So I always had one person dedicated to be hip on hip with that person, side by side the entire time. Because if you're half-assing your training, you're going to get half-assed results. And I just want to make sure everyone understands that, because anytime we weren't able to train people properly, it took us twice as long, cost us twice as much, and what the hell good did it do us? So we need to make sure we're actually dedicating that time towards training. But we often schedule them at the wrong times. We don't do it enough. We don't follow a defined process. And the other thing too is we often teach them too much stuff at once, so they don't learn anything well, because people need a certain amount of repetitions to actually get good at something. Like the first time you swung at a baseball, you probably missed it. Right? It probably took you some time before you could hit a baseball properly, or shoot a hockey puck, or shoot a basketball. Of course, Dave, because you're just man. But having said that, there's a lot of things we just need to get the reps in. And so something that happens often is we often graduate people in our training too quickly. It's like shift one, is supposed to be this. Okay, well, the next shift, show them a different station, even if they haven't mastered the first one. My rule was, before they could move on and progress in their training, they had to basically evidence their ability to do all of those things properly. Like, I wasn't going to allow them to move to a different product line unless they had finished the first one and could do it properly and well. Because why am I going to get them to do everything terribly rather than one thing really well? It doesn't help us as a business if they just can't do anything properly, because then the staff come in and they have to pick up the slack for them. And then usually what happens if they have to pick up the slack for them, they just give them the most menial tasks, which doesn't help them improve or become a full team member. How many times have like one big task for us was actually doing the rotations in our sandwich station. We called it flips, where basically we rotated every veggie, everything in our station just to preserve the freshness of it. Because we had a very front-facing sandwich counter. So basically, like instead of letting everything run out and then replacing it, we kept it filled, but then we rotated it throughout the day to make sure that the oldest stuff was on top, and we always use that first. So this is a process, took like 20 minutes ish, but it was a fairly decent job. And if you didn't do it right, like you could spill everything and it was a pain in the butt to clean up. So what often happened is sometimes, when it got to our closing list, the closer would just say, hey, why don't you go just mop the floor and I'll do this. And then the next time, the next closer comes in and says, oh, you've never done it before? Oh, well, then I'll do it and you go do this other thing. Well, guess what? 3 months later, that person's never learned how to do it and they've never gotten better at it. And so all of a sudden, the closers are the ones that are doing all the hard tasks, and then they're getting burnt out because they don't actually allow this person to improve, right? So that's why we don't move people on until they are ready, because having a half-trained employee does no one any good, right? So those are a few things we do that are often just not setting yourself up for success. Like I'm a scuba diver. And so PADI certifications, if anyone scuba dives, you have to show that you can complete a certain skill, not that you've read the material, not that you can demonstrate your knowledge on a test, but you actually show them, hey, I can do this skill that I need to do. And they don't pass you until you can demonstrate it. Right. And so the same thing works for restaurant training. Exactly. If for anyone's on video, Dave's giving me the okay symbol. But anyway, so those are a few things that often happen that I often find are just terrible for training. So we move people to too many stations too fast. We don't train them well enough. And another one that we do is we get them up to trained on a couple stations or a couple things, and then we stop training them and we just kind of leave them there. And once they know the basic information, they're going to be slower. They're not going to do things properly, but then we don't work with them on the efficiency afterwards, right? We just leave them there, and then we wonder 2 months later, how come they're still so slow? Well, no one's helped them become faster. They just thought that what they were trained and the way they were doing it was all good. Right? So those are a few things. Restaurant owners, before you open more locations, stop. I've seen way too many owners go from 1 to 2 to 3 to bankruptcy. I know because I was once there myself. The difference in owning multiple locations is how you have to change, and if you don't make the shift, it'll take years to recover. I took my 3 biggest lessons and put them in a free ebook called the Multi-Unit Playbook, so you don't have to go through the same struggles that I did. Go to the link in the description below and get your free copy today. That happened, which...
it's funny how much timing does matter for the little things, especially in the back of house and in the kitchen and on the line and things like that. And one of the things that we always had fun with is in our team meetings, we'd always do a little bit of a kind of like a boot camp review of the basics and have fun with that, and kind of almost a mini retrain. So we'd have an all staff meeting. I'd go behind the counter. I'd ask questions and do a little test. We might have, a handful of team members come up and make product and have everybody else judge it, right? For those reasons. And we'd have little timing competitions too. And then we'd rate the product based on the timing and based on the quality and presentation. And so we kind of turned it into this little, what we call Pete Olympics, and in our staff meetings, and just have a little fun with it. And that information is now completely retained because it was in a competitive, fun format. And we're having competitions, but it also set the standards, because now we know that, hey, from front to back, I can make a full sandwich, including taking the things off the grill and cooking everything and handing it to the customer in, 1 minute and 47 seconds, and still have the quality and everything good to go. So now there's a standard, and now people are trying to kind of hit those timings because of that. So it's fun. Adding fun in the training can actually go a long way. It make the training enjoyable, can do a lot for retention.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some training theories. Now, one that I would always teach our team, which is show them how, tell them why, and follow up. There's just 3 steps of training. Now, it's pretty simple. So number 1, you have to show them how to do it, demonstrate how to do it, okay? And now this has a couple parts to it. So number 1, you show them. So say, hey, like, let's just washing a dish, okay? I'm going to show them how to do it. Hey, take the dish, rinse it off, put it in the soapy water, blah, blah, blah. You go through all the steps. You show them perfectly how to do it. And then you say, okay, now you do it, and get them to demonstrate it back to you, right? So that is step 1. You have to show them how to do it. Next, you have to tell them why it's important. So for example, why do we need to sanitize dishes? We have a 3-compartment sink. Why do we need to sanitize them? Well, if you don't sanitize them, that's where bacteria can grow. And then all of a sudden we're going to prep food into this. And then all of a sudden bacteria gets on our food and we serve it to our customers. When you take a big spoonful of something, do you want a big spoonful of bacteria in your mouth? Probably not. So that's why we got to do this, right? So you explain
and you get in trouble from the
why.
health inspector.
Well, but that's not what's going to gross them out. And here's what I say. I always take it to the extreme. And so here's another great example. Like, we all have coolers that we open up, right? So we open up the bottom of, say, a sandwich table, or we have something stored in a cooler. We put our hands into that little pocket of the door to pull out, right? And so when you wipe that down at the end of the night, I ask people, okay, are you sanitizing in where that handle is, in where you put your hand up into that little handle and pull it out? Are you sanitizing in there? And they're like, well, sometimes I miss that. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you know why that's relevant? And they're like, well, no, it's just, like, whatever. I clean the rest of it. And I say, well, because during that time, how much might you have like food on your hands? Or, you might have something like, how often do you wash your hands? Because obviously we should wash our hands a lot, don't get me wrong. And in our business, we wore gloves. And so, but sometimes we would open that door with the gloves on, which means whatever was on your gloves transferred to that little space up there. And so there would be some cheese or some sauce. And I'm like, hey man, so like next time you go and open that up, what you've actually just done is you've put your hand up there, and any of the bacteria and stuff that's been growing in there when you don't clean it is now on your glove. And then you're taking that and you're scooping up food to make your sandwich, and you're putting it and you're smearing all of the bacteria all over your sandwich. And that's what you're eating. Is that what you want to eat for dinner? And they were like, I didn't think about it that way. So that's what this tell them why it's important thing. And we have to go to the extremes of it, because they will remember that story. If you just say, yeah, you do it because it's your job, they're not going to care about that. But if you tell them the repercussions of not doing it, they are more likely to remember it, right? So like another story that we used to have is, because a bunch of our stores were robbed and people came in and, we had the cash drawer closed with the cash float inside the cash register. Basically what happened is a bunch of people would then, like when they broke in, they would literally throw the POS, which sits on top of it. They threw that on the ground, which was like the most expensive thing and took us out of business for days until we had it replaced.
Yep.
Just to get like the couple $100 that was in the float. So what we started doing is leaving the drawer open at night so people could see there was nothing in it. And so I asked people every time we trained them on that, I'm like, why do you think we do that? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, this is why. Because if we got robbed, then they're going to destroy a whole bunch of stuff. That's going to mean way more than that. So we take that and we go and we lock up that float, right? So that's why we changed it. And we told them the story. So again, there is show them how, which is again, you demonstrating, then them demonstrating, tell them why. And then the next one is follow up, right? Now, here's the thing. If you teach someone to do something once and you never follow up to make sure they're doing it properly, what do you think will happen over time? Do you think they will continue to do it properly? Probably not, right? And here's the key, is that the follow-up never ends. So that is the key I want you guys to take away from this, is you can never stop following up, because that's part of your job as a leader. Because people will naturally go through what's called the forgetting curve, right? Everyone's familiar with the learning curve, right? It goes like this. People learn, and that's the learning curve. But people forget that it goes down the other side, and that's called the forgetting curve, right? So they will get something once, and they will do it, and they'll practice it. About 2 weeks later, they will stop doing it that way, and they will start doing it a different way. And you're going to come in and be like, dude, we showed you how to do that. Why are you doing it differently? That is called the forgetting curve, and it happens to everyone, which is why in our training packet, we literally have train them on this, and then, a couple weeks later, review this again and watch them do these things again, because they will have changed what they are doing, just because maybe they're seeing other people do it slightly differently, or they're trying to think of different ways to do it, or they're just getting in a rush and forgetting about the importance of some things. That's what the forgetting curve is all about. They will fall off standard, and it is the most human thing to do, and we need to follow up constantly, because even your most senior people, if, say, for example, you know that this one specific task is the most important one to do, if you never follow up about it and no one ever notices that they don't do it, eventually it will stop getting done. Happens to every single human being over time.
Yep.
So that's why we need to keep standards high and give proper feedback, which is in a different podcast that we have.
Can I share about my follow-up process?
Please.
that we train about as well? Is, and this is like so simple and subtle, but it is almost never done. On day one, at the end of your new team member shift, how many owners or high-level managers, the people that are truly responsible for running that store, will take that person aside after their first day and for 5 minutes and just sit them down, just have a casual conversation, right? For follow-up. So, hey, you're done your first day. How was it? What did you like best? What surprised you? Did you have any, what were the things that you had the most trouble with, right? And just have a quick conversation, and like, oh yeah, no, it was pretty good. My trainer was fun, and this was cool. I didn't realize how many regulars you guys had. Everybody knew everybody's name. Yeah, great. This was kind of tough though. I was surprised how hard it was to make that sandwich. It's like, yeah, absolutely. So tomorrow you're going to keep practicing that. You're just going to get better and better, and everything's good. But having that 5-minute debrief of their first day closes off that day and lets them refresh and reset for the next day. And then when you have another 5-minute conversation with them after day 2, it's the same thing. And now they're getting into that rhythm, and you're teaching them about communication. You're teaching them about having meetings, right? And debriefing on what's good and what's not, and where the challenges are to find the holes and things. And so my system was always, after day 1 and 2, if it wasn't me, it was my senior manager that was having a 5-minute debrief conversation, just checking in on them. Then we would do it again after like shift 5. And then we would do it again at like week 2 or week 3. And so we would keep having these check-ins and conversations, and documented that they got done. And it changed everything, because we found out where their strengths were. We found out where they were a little bit slower, because they told us, because we asked them. And then we found out where to spend a little more time with them to get them up to speed before moving them on. So all those quick check-ins and debriefs are huge.
Couple other things I'm going to add to this, and then we are going to go into what might be one of the most controversial tips of the day.
Ooh.
I know. So the couple of things I want to add is that you do need to check in to see how your training style needs to get adapted. Some people might need more repetition. Some people might need more explanation. Some people might be afraid to ask questions. So you have to go through and do those check-ins after every shift. And most of them are not just like, yeah, you did good today, good job, and then you leave. These are asking them questions about how they think the training process is going. What can we do to help you learn better? We need to be judging that. And we also need to be giving them feedback on where they stand. Hey, this part you're doing really well at, but this part I really need you to do, in the next time. Now, another tip for orientation, which is something that we started to do a while ago, is we would log things like their birthdays. We would log things that were important to them and key information about them that we might have learned in the interview process. And we kept that as part of their employee file. And what we did is we actually had like what we called a people binder, where it had all this information, their training checklist, and the managers knew where it was accessible and stuff like that. And so we actually kept it there. And what would happen is, on a calendar, we would put their birthdays. Another question we would ask is what their favorite treat was, right? Like, what kind of dessert item did they like? One dude liked brown M&Ms, and only brown M&Ms. He's like, I don't like the other ones. I just like brown M&Ms. And so literally our manager went out on his birthday, went to like one of those like bulk stores, and literally spent 20 minutes picking out only brown M&Ms and bought a bag of only brown M&Ms and gave it to him on his birthday. And granted, this was like 6 months prior. And so we give them this little gift, which again didn't cost much, but he was just floored. Like, oh my God, how did you guys know that, I like this? It meant so much to him. And we would have everyone sign a birthday card. And this is one of the things we did to try and, help build retention for people, is we would go out and give them a gift, and not just any random gift like, here, have a free lunch or something like that. It was literally thought out and specific for them. And those little things, because when people know that they are cared about and there's a good work environment and all those other things line up, but when they're cared about, it goes a long way to keep people there. So there's a couple of things I wanted to add. Now, here's the more controversial part of what I'm going to tell you, is that you actually need to...
I don't even know where you're going with this.
You need to fire people quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. It's tough because we're humans and we're nice people, right? And now I don't mean fire them on the first day unless there's like a really, 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 big thing that happens. But here's what happened. My managers often, we would ask them how this person was doing, and their answer would be like, oh, they're doing okay. They're still learning. Then I'd ask them like a few shifts later, how's this person doing? They're like, oh, he's doing a little better. And then 2 weeks go by. I'm like, hey, how's this person doing? They're like, well, not so good. And so then, 2 weeks more goes by, and I'm like, this dude should be fully trained by now. Like, what's happening? It's like, yeah, he, still just getting the handle on our core product. I'm like, how much money have we wasted on this person? And so here's what I started getting my managers to do, because I had one manager who was really good at cutting people fast. And we don't cut them based on their ability to grasp the information or their ability to do it. I'll give you an example. We're not training them on we're not measuring them on their proficiency, right? Because we know their proficiency isn't going to be great. We are measuring them on their intangibles. And so what I mean by that is I had a checklist that our managers would fill out, and these were yes or no questions. Did this person show up 10 minutes early? Yes or no? Okay? Because someone at a brand new job who shows up 10 minutes early, we know that that is an indication of preparedness and organization, right? We know that that will bode well for them later on down the line. If they are late on their first couple shifts,
red flag.
They're showing the best of them when they start work with you. So that's giving us an indication. And so what we were trying to figure out is this person someone that we can train and is worth our time training? One of the other questions is, something like, were they happy and energetic and outgoing? Because we're a customer service environment, so that was important for us. We were like, are they naturally like that? Do they naturally take initiative? And I'll give you an example of this. We had some people that we trained who would come in, and as soon as maybe the trainer was, helping another trainee or doing something else, that person would find something to do, versus the person who would just stand there and wait. Right? That's a difference. Because literally, I remember one of our trainers got busy and they were out, on the line, and they looked back and we had a swing door with a little mirror or like not a mirror, but a little glass see-through thing. Window. And literally the person was just like looking out at them, watching them be really busy and just standing there watching. And I'm like, like we can't train you to have initiative. Right? So initiative was an important thing in our organization. So did they display initiative today? Yes or no? Right? That was another one. Now, there was a bunch of other questions that we had. And again, forgive me, I can't remember all of them, but it was basically the things that they could show that showed the character. It wasn't if they could make a sandwich on day one. It isn't whether they knew, proper food safety protocols on day one, if that wasn't an expectation before being hired. We did make sure they got their food safety training later. Again, we're talking about people with their first jobs and blah, 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 blah. So we were looking for the things that would make them a good employee or a bad employee, because we looked at all of our best employees and we looked at the characteristics that they had and we lined those all up. What do our best people do? They are early, they are proactive, they are customer service oriented, they are fast paced and, efficient. Like there was a whole bunch of those things. They are problem solvers. Like we looked at all those things, and then we looked in the first, 3 or 4 shifts, does this person display that characteristic? Right? Because it's not that they're good or bad, and it's not that they can't learn how to make the product, but you can't teach someone how to smile. You can't teach them how to have initiative. And there might be a better place for them, and that's totally okay. Right? And so what we would do is we would have this list, and the managers would fill out every shift. And if by shift 3, they had to make a determination, is this someone we're going to keep training, or do we cut our losses here? Because we had way too many employees that, let's face it, we're never going to be great employees for our organization, and we kept them on for months. It cost us thousands of dollars. Why do that, and why waste your time for someone who's never possibly going to get there? We're better off going back to the drawing board, cutting our losses, and finding someone who will be able to fit into our organization and will be great, and optimize all of our hiring and training around finding the ones who will make a difference. So that's one thing we did. And it's controversial because the managers always said, well, but they're a nice person. Like, I don't give a shit if they're nice. I care if they're going to be a great employee for our organization. Maybe I'm a mean old Andrew. I don't know. But the thing is, they might be nice for a different work environment that's going to be perfect for them, and they're going to be happier. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them as a person. They're just not the right fit for what we are looking for in our organization, and it's up to us to determine what that is, find it, and organize all of our systems around that. So that's one of the tips, because our managers always complained about it, and we had to make that determination. And if they kept people on too long, I always went back and I said, hey guys, when did you know that that person wasn't a fit? Did they display these things? You marked in your report that they didn't do these things in day 3 and day 2 and day 1. Why do we keep them on longer than that? They're like, oh, I guess you're right. I knew it back then, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to be mean or whatever. But it's not being mean. You're just doing us both a favor at that point. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, we just have to make those determinations earlier. And the reason why we do it for 3 shifts and not just 1 or 2 is because we're also looking for patterns. If they're not 10 minutes early one day, but they're 10 minutes early the other 2 days, okay, I'm okay with that, right? If they're happy and energetic 2 out of 3 days, I'm okay with that. Maybe they're having a bad day. We're looking for patterns. What are the consistent patterns we can observe? And after 3 days, you do have a decent enough time to evaluate some of those characteristics. So that's it's going to be controversial, but that had really helped us find better people and cut our losses with the ones who were never ultimately going to be that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when you're in your business that long as an operator or your manager, and they have the experience and you've gone through a bunch of people, you start to really know very quickly. When like by day 2 or 3, if you have somebody that is not going to work, it's because you've had the experience from several other people in the past, and you've done this enough times that this is not a fit. And once you know that, why are we dragging it for another 2, 3, 4 weeks? Because you're right. Like, I see that happen all of the time.
Yeah.
And like I said, it feels mean. It sucks. It's the worst part of the job for anybody. And if it isn't, then like if you have an owner or a manager that enjoys firing people, they're probably a sociopath and a narcissist, and they probably shouldn't be working for you. They should hate that part of the job, and because it sucks. But it's what's best for the business, which should always come first, and it's what's best for the team. And at the end of the day, it's what's best for that individual that you're letting go. And Andrew, you already said it. It's because it's not going to be an environment that they're even going to be happy in, because they're not going to catch on. They're not going to be at the level of everybody else. So once you've determined that, let them go. Let them go be powerful and successful in the environment that's right for them, and it's not this one.
And let me tell you this, so many people that we keep on for that extra 4 weeks or 6 weeks, they end up quitting anyway.
Exactly.
Right? So what good did that do us except cost us a bunch of time and money, right? But I want to go back to
frustrations with everybody else in the team
100%.
for a while, and it's just, it's not a good situation for anybody.
But let me go back. So you mentioned that when people feel or know that it's not going to be a good fit, what I would challenge everyone to do, because I think everyone sometimes gets that, but we are afraid to act on it because it's a feeling. So what I want you to do is I want you to go back and think, okay, when I feel that way, what did they do that led me to feel that way? Because we do have intuition, right? And we need to take that intuition and turn it into a system. So we need to figure out, okay, what is it that once this person does this, then I'm like, nope, they're probably not going to work out. And I've seen that, repeat itself enough times that I can call that a pattern. Because we're trying to find that correlation, between those patterns. So we need to know when I feel that way, why am I feeling that way, and what happened to make me feel that way, then move that into a system, because your managers, you don't want them to have to do this for 10 years before they figure that out. So when we create a system around it, we can then codify it and actually make sure that it's followed. And then that will lead to success as an organization, versus you just feeling that way and saying, no, I'll just give them another try. And, I'll just leave it for a few more days. And then you end up getting stuck with the same thing. But last thing I'll say is that when someone is not meeting expectations, it is your responsibility to then have a come to Jesus conversation, is kind of what I call it. I basically say, hey man, so here's where you're at. Tomorrow is make or break day. Tomorrow is your, Super Bowl. Tomorrow's your championship. I need to see this and this and this from you tomorrow. That's what I need to see, because that's the expectation every day here. And if I don't see it, we're not going to be a good fit. It is your responsibility to let them know exactly where they stand before you make the call to cut them. So by day 2, if you're not seeing certain things, it is up to you to make sure they are aware of it, because it is unfair for you to cut them for something that they at least aren't aware of and can't potentially try and improve. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's where I view it more of an ethical lens. I mean, you can do it, but that's not what I do, because I sleep well at night knowing that, hey, I did everything I could. I let them know, and then the ball's in their court to do with it what they will. So guys, thank you for being here. We've talked a lot about training. Again, having a system around it, having a defined process to training them at the right times, not letting them go further until they've mastered one station is huge. Making sure we're cutting our losses early. Also making sure they feel valued and that our orientation is great and that we're actually getting to know them as people, because ultimately we are hiring people, not numbers. And if people feel cared for, they will stay longer and do more and be better in our organization. So Dave, thank you for being here. For everybody watching and listening, thank you guys for being here. We would love if you could take just a quick minute and give us a 5-star review, or if you found this valuable, share this with someone else you might know in the restaurant industry that could use some of these tips as well, because we would love to impact even more individuals, help them make more money and have a better life with their business. All right, guys, thank you. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.